Bem-vindos, bienvenidos, welcome to the third edition of Brazil Immersive Fashion Week, a place to meet the people and the brands shaping the future of fashion and culture. My name is Olivia Melchior, and if you are here for the first time, I invite you to visit BRIFW.3, where you can find inspiring content about art, culture, fashion, and of course, technology, just like the one you are about to enjoy. I am at State Innovation Center, an amazing place to connect creative people in São Paulo, and also the home of Brazil Immersive Fashion Week. And today, we will talk about the future of artificial intelligence with Zohaib Ahmed, computer scientist and the founder and CEO of Resemble AI. Good night, Zohaib.
Yeah, good night. It's the afternoon where I am, but that's how the world is today. Everyone's everywhere.
Yeah, and where are you right now?
I'm actually in San Francisco, California.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. So before we start, I would like to tell people a little bit about Resemble AI, which is an online voice generator that uses artificial intelligence to create human-like voiceovers in seconds. And I tried that myself, and I was really impressed with what I tried out there. What came up after I started the process. So, but before we talk about Resemble AI, Zohaib, people really love to know how the path, how the way you've been through until you open your own company.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's been quite a long journey, but me and my co-founder and majority of our team is based out in Canada, and we're Canadians. Well, most of us are Canadians, but we do have people all around the world now. But I grew up in Canada, went to school there, etc., and then came out to the Bay Area with all the tech startups and got myself involved with a few interesting startups that were in anything from travel to augmented reality, and I got early exposure to natural language as an interface, and all the way to building augmented reality devices. And I'm big, really big on how the future of computing will become beyond just screens one day, hopefully. And I think starting Resemble, voice has a lot to play within that future. So I somehow, found myself building this product, which I believe is changing the world almost every day. I could try explaining how it's changing the world, but I feel people are using it and they come up with ideas better than I can, and they figure out what to do with it more effectively than I can, which is always great to see.
Yeah, last edition, I had an interview with some researchers from London College of Fashion, and they were working with biometric devices in textiles. And they told me a sentence that I think it was quite interesting. They said, we are changing from an internet, a really visual internet, to a sensitive internet, where we're gonna start to work with different kinds of, affections, and we will stop only working with the eye, and we will start to get affected from, all over the body. And you just said that you were working with augmented reality before. And why did you choose voice? Why is it voice so important?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's voice is it's a very interesting phenomenon, right? Like once I've heard your voice, for example, I can describe your voice at a very high level, right? But every time I hear your voice, like, you can turn off your camera and you could start talking maybe like 3 weeks later, 6 months later, and I could recognize your voice. And something that it's very human to like take these take this like data of audio stream coming in and recognize that it belongs to you. But what I found really interesting about voices is that it makes up like half of your experience. Like your visuals are obviously very important, and you're consuming a lot through that. But what you listen is it's kind of equally, or the other half of like the experience itself. So it's why people go to movie theaters to watch movies and not just sit at home, because theaters typically have very good audio systems, and you get immersed in this like sound like a space where everything's coming at you at once. And I think one of the reasons why we started Resemble is unfortunately audio and speech were very static. So they weren't malleable. And what I mean by malleable is like you couldn't like twist audio like you could twist like images, etc. So companies that are building like visuals and like doing computer graphic stuff, they've had the luxury of like Photoshop since like 1991. It's a very old piece of software now, and they've had luxury of like Final Cut Pro and all these like pieces of software that essentially get them to like build visuals with nothing. We introduced like green screen technology at one point, and it never came back from there. And so there was nothing like that for audio. It was all very static. It was all very much stuck in like this old school space. It was very hard for creators to use audio. And where I think we're making the biggest impact, and one of the reasons that we started Resemble is when you look at a lot of audio experiences, like I could tell you, I could ask you right now, when was the last time you went to see a movie where the visuals were like gorgeous, like it was gorgeous visuals, but then the audio was just like the speech or the dialogue was just so poor. And it happens all the time because the dialogue is like you only have a few shots at it. You can't iterate over it, you can't fix it. And that's kind of why we started Resemble. We wanted to make audio this malleable thing, and we wanted to make it accessible so that creatives could actually use audio just like they use computer graphics, just like they open Photoshop or they open their favorite tool on their computer and they render something, or they record a video and publish it on YouTube. It should just be as effortless to work with speech and audio. And this is a core piece of why we started Resemble.
Yeah, and it's crazy because when I found Resemble AI, I was looking up on the internet about synthetic voices for avatars, because today one of the biggest problems for a digital influencer is the voice. So you set up your image and then you need someone to dub your digital clone. And that's a massive problem because the celebrities, they don't want to, to have a double work, a double job. And they really want the image, the avatar, to work by itself and not be dependent on the celebrity or the influencer. And it's really big in Brazil, because in Brazil, with the avatars, the celebrities avatars, they start to. So I would like you to explain how Resemble AI actually works, and if it fits for this problem, if it solves this problem with the avatars. And also I'd like you to talk about the main uses of this technology, which is, you just said, it's really to create flexibility to the voice. But what are the main cases where people can use today Resemble?
Absolutely. So like you said, with avatars, avatars themselves are a very interesting things, and I could dive into that a little bit later on in this spiel that I'm about to do here. But one of the things that Resemble was primarily made for was for conversational experiences, and there was a reason why we chose that as the initial entry point, because we spoke to a lot of like producers and directors and like creative directors of like shows and movies and films and documentaries and all sorts of creatives and ads, and we landed on something that was like nothing to do with them initially, which was like this conversational AI space. And our first and main usage in that space was essentially to build these high quality synthetic voices that you could interact with. And anything from you pick up the phone and you call your telephone provider, or your internet provider for help, and there's an automated voice on the other end. Anything from that to, call center automation and etc. We try to like dive deep into that and build an ecosystem or an application that would really help those folks. As the technology got better and as the voices started sounding more and more real, we started seeing some more creative use cases. And some of the first use cases we started seeing were basically like these conversational agents within games. And this is essentially what you could consider like avatars, but these are just like, like you come across the game character and the game character talks to you, has a conversation. It's kind of like the same experience here. So that's kind of like the use cases went from this conversational experiences, and now what we're seeing is a trend where it's not just engineers that are working with this technology, but it's creatives as well. And I think one thing that's really important to understand is happening today is like there's a line where creatives and developers were kind of staying on each side, and now that line is blurring. So you have like AI art that is generated by not writing any code. It's just you type in some natural language prompt like English or something, and you get images out. And similarly with like language modeling, you write some text, you click a button, and you get more text out, and that's completely artificially generated. And so it doesn't take a lot of engineering per se to use some of these tools, which is now making it possible for use cases that are far more creative to come into play. So an example of this is in March of 2022, so like a few months ago, I guess, one of our customers used Resemble to create a documentary called the Andy Warhol series. And it was on Netflix, and it was nominated for four Emmys. And the entire documentary, every single narration, which turned out to be about 2 hours of audio, was completely generated with AI, right? And the director, Andrew Rossi, who we worked pretty closely with, who was using Resemble, did such a terrific job in being the creative and actually leveraging the tool to actually do something impactful in his work. So adding that authenticity to Andy Warhol's voice, so it sounds like him, and he's reading his own diaries, which is why it's called the Andy Warhol Diaries. And he's reading his own work in his own voice, and it kind of gives that authenticity that wasn't possible before. So there are a lot more use cases today that are a lot more creative than they were before. We work with like anything from film and entertainment to advertising and marketing campaigns with fashion brands. A lot of avatars, which exactly like you said, they're trying to reproduce their own persona in this digital space. And where we see us fitting in really neatly, apart from like enabling creatives to make audio malleable or to be more flexible. But the other thing that works really well for us is that we always think of using AI for doing things that human beings can't do. So for example, if for the fashion week, if you were to record a message for every attendee and have a welcome message for every attendee, you would be reading for a very long time because there's a lot of attendees, right? But imagine if you could do that with like a few seconds with your voice, right? We actually make that possible. I'm assuming, since like fashion is so global, there are people attending who speak different languages. I mean, forget different languages, you're in Brazil, so there's like different levels of or different dialects of Portuguese, right? Like
Exactly,
you could probably
yeah.
tell who's from Rio and who's from Sao Paulo, which we found out the hard way. But we can actually go between accents, go between languages, and keep your voice. So we can get like a voice of, say, Olivia here, and speaking like Portuguese, but speaking Spanish, speaking like a particular dialect of Portuguese, speaking like English with an Australian accent, speaking Japanese, Hindi, whatever you want. But you retain that identity. It's still Olivia. If I were to hear it, I would still be like, oh, that's still Olivia talking, but she's speaking a different language. And that's something that AI can do, and that voice actors and humans just can't. Like any human being typically can't speak more than 2
I
languages
really
fluently.
need to try it because my English will be much better with your technology. I have to say, I will try it.
And we see a lot of interesting use cases. We see, customers that are using this for uh, dyslexia, which is like, folks who struggle to read. We see this for folks who have like vocal cord surgery, who have ALS, etc. So like the technology itself is so impactful. It can not only be used for like entertainment and marketing and ads and games, but it also can, we have customers that use it to teach language in general. So it's really fascinating.
No, it's amazing. And about the, we live, at least in Brazil, we have a huge problem with deepfakes and voice. Also, it's a big moment with that. So what do you think about it, and how do you protect? How do you work with people maybe using their voices and their synthetic voices, not for a good in a good way, but in a bad way?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is in like layers, right? So there's layers that we can control, like we as in me and Resemble. But then there's layers that we necessarily can't control, but we still have to somehow contribute and think about them. So there's layers that we can control. So for example, when you went on Resemble and built your voice, we got you to speak very particular sentences. If you didn't speak those sentences, then the product doesn't work. The voice that you build is only available to your account, so no one else can use it. We do have the ability for people to upload data directly to us. In that case, we require consent. So we will always have this like balance of who is using Resemble and what are they using it for, and making sure that the voices aren't going into the folks that didn't submit the data in some way. So that's at the application level. Then we've been doing a lot of work for like just general like deep fake detection, right? So we have this open source repository, which essentially what that means is there's this code that we publish to everybody in the world, right? So it's not just proprietary to us. We can't kind of like open it up to everybody, and we said like, okay, cool. This code has the ability to, or this model, it's code that generates a neural network. This neural network has the ability to tell what is real and what is fake, right? That was our first stab at it, and we kind of open sourced that work because of the fact that we wanted more people to be exposed to this problem as a whole. We wanted more contributions to be put into that. And so since then, we've put in a lot of work ourselves to think about things like watermarking audio files. We've been enhancing, like discovering like what is a deep fake in terms of audio, at least, what is a deep fake and what is not, etc. So that's I would say a second layer, right? So the first layer is essentially what we can control. Second is what we contribute to. And a third layer, which I think is like very important, is just education. So the way I like to put this, I'm not sure how this correlates to Brazil, but I'll put this analogy out anyways. You'll see this commercial for Burger King, and I'll pick on Burger King just because, and you'll see this like a burger, right? And you see it on TV, and it's like this passive burger with a perfect tomato, 2 slices of perfect tomatoes, and it's huge. And you go to the store and you buy this burger. The burger never looks like that burger on TV, right? It always looks like a squished version.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But it's not like you get disappointed every time you go. So you still go to that fast food restaurant every week, every month. I don't know what frequency, but you go there occasionally, right? And your expectations are set. And so you've been educated already, and through time, that what you see in magazines and what you see on TV and what you're visually getting in isn't necessarily always the truth. And so you've kind of baked in some sort of like, truth detector in your head, at least for your visual. And I think something like this for audio is also necessary. Trying to figure out where the source is, where it's coming from, etc. I think it's a huge part of like educating everybody about how deepfakes work. And I'm glad the Netflix documentary that came out earlier this year. One thing that I'm really happy that the director Andrew Rossi did is he made it very clear at the beginning of every episode and at the end of every episode that the voice was artificial. right? And it wasn't like he was trying to say like, oh, this is a robot voice. He was basically trying to say like, we're using an artificial voice here, but you won't even notice. Like this documentary will start. Each episode is an hour. 5 minutes into the documentary, you won't even know if it's like artificial or not. It's just you're just consuming it at this point. So I think it's very important to like kind of have that third layer, which is just educating everybody about what's going on. And I hope everyone kind of just gets around to that Burger King analogy eventually, which they read things, they listen to things, and they do their homework and find out what the source of truth is.
No, it's so true. It's about education and let people know exactly what technology can do, so they can be aware, and that needs to be very clear to everyone. So the last question, and I knew it will be so quick, but it's a really important one. So when we think about the metaverse, that word that's really scary for so many people, and it's not yet defined. So, but I really do believe that it's a worth definition is as an ecosystem of technologies that creates a hybrid reality between physical and digital, using, Internet of Things, and that really leads us to an environment where you can relate to things around you in a very intimate way. So voice is definitely a very important issue to create affection. So my question for you is, what is the word metaverse for you in your conception? And what can we expect about AI in this new reality?
Yeah, I mean, metaverse is like I said at the beginning of this call, like I worked at augmented reality startup before this called Magic Leap, and before that, even when I was doing my undergrad, I got the university to buy a Oculus Rift, a development kit 1. At that time, it was just called DK1, and it was really early in VR at that point, and I think metaverse goes way before that too. I don't think that was like the early stage of metaverse. I don't know if you recall Second Life. There was a social media called like
Of
a platform
course,
called
yeah.
Second Life a long time ago, and like I would argue that was the early definition of metaverse, right? And there were games that were really early and very, very popular among kids, where they were creating these avatars. I would say since the inception of the internet, there has been a concept of the metaverse. I think the only thing that's changed is like what we could use the metaverse for, and I think the population of the metaverse is increasing over time. The people that care about the metaverse is increasing over time. So that's kind of like to me, it's hard to define like the word itself, but the simple definition of the metaverse is like interaction of human beings in a digital space. Like I think that's like a very boring definition of the word, but it's the one that I think sticks true from like the early days of like people going on ICQ and having like a number represent them or something, right? Or going on like Second Life, etc. And these are really old stuff. I'm not sure who recognizes what ICQ is anymore, but it's I would say that's like the introduction of this concept of the metaverse. And what I'm really excited about now is I think somewhere along the way, these experiences were extremely human. And like I have extremely like I personally have like fond memories of like playing video games and like being in these like experiences where I could spend hours not doing anything, literally. Like the game doesn't even matter at this point, right? It's just interacting with friends, and it's like there are a lot of fond memories there because you're still interacting with real people. And I think like somewhere along the lines we've lost this, I think, human touch or connection, especially with like the vast amounts of social media that's out there. And I would even categorize like social media as like some sort of metaverse. There's a reason why Facebook or Meta is like expanding into that area now. I think social media kind of falls nicely into that bucket. But it's exciting to see like how the next phase of like metaverse, which is creating these human connections again, I think a lot has to do with how authentic they feel. And they might not need to be like authentic, like a human connection. I think there's a fallacy that, you know, I need to see your real face. I need to hear your real voice. But I do need to hear like something that represents you, which is you, right? And I'm sure people in the fashion space know this more than I do about representation and et cetera. So the thing that I'm interested in most from our perspective when we think about voice and the metaverse is that, you know, it's so important that we have like these we open up this communication channel, which is essentially voice, to a broader number of people. So historically, you know, if you look at like social interactions, like, you know, even outside of the more modern definition of the metaverse, you'll notice that it's been very difficult for minorities and for folks that aren't in the majority to participate in some of these experiences. And a large part of that has been the voice. It's been the fact that, you know, you're cautious about putting this real representation of you out there, even though in this metaverse you can dress yourself up as whatever you want and you could appear like whatever you want, etc. You still can't talk, and so a lot of people still use chat and like words as like their main mechanism of communication, which you're missing out on so much of the communication nuances when you're just typing stuff and not talking to each other. And I think that's where we play a real part in the metaverse. Is think about how, you know, like you could have a character in this metaverse experience that represents you within this particular group, and that experience, that character could have a voice that represents you, which is unique to your voice. Doesn't necessarily need to be your voice, but it represents you. You feel comfortable in that voice, and as you talk, it comes out in this artificial voice on the other end. And I think like exposing that intersection of like, you know, creating communication with voice, I think that's where I'm really excited about how where voice makes a real impact within these metaverse experiences. So yeah.
You know, I worked a lot for 10 years in Paris, and I do speak French, but it's never my native language. And sometimes I was not in a good mood because I think voice and language is something that it comes together with your spirit of the day. Like you wake up one day, you speak, you know, a different language amazingly. And if you wake up in a wrong mood, you just cannot speak it. You just, I don't know if you ever felt that, but and I was working like for 10 years in Paris, and sometimes I was so pissed off because I had a great presentation and I need to make it in French, and I just lost the words, and you know, not the right words were there. So do you think very soon you're going to solve this problem for me, and I will be speaking in my native language, but somehow I'll be using a device that people will understand myself in proper French?
Oh, absolutely. I think that is definitely happening within like the next, I would say, 5 to 10 years. Is you'll have like devices, and I think the only thing that matters is like accuracy and speed and latency of like how quickly we can perform that task. I mean, the reason I say 5 to 10 years and not tomorrow is because there's this concept of translation, which is extremely human to do, right? Like you said that, you know, your French is like a second or third language, I guess, for you, right? So like me, it's like I mean, even though I was born in Canada, my Canadian French is not great. So it's not great. But you know what ends up happening as a native speaker is you think in one language in your head, so your brain is operating in English. At least my brain operates in English, and then when I'm speaking my second or third language, what I'm trying to do is translate. And I think I totally get that because of the cognitive ability that you have on that particular day. You are basically translating your own head into like something and then bringing it out the other
Exactly.
side.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
sometimes you just, you know, you're tired or whatever, and you said that cognitive engine is not working as well as it should. I think similarly, like the translation technologies that are being built out there, they're still very early because, you know, if you use, up until this day, if you use Google Translate, particularly with French, I'm not sure if French is just one of those languages that people are extremely picky about, but it's still not accurate enough, right? It still makes mistakes. Translation is still pretty vague, and there's tons of research that is going on into translation from audio speech to speech, like, you know, without this intermediate layer of text, because the layer of text introduces a lot of error itself, right? Because the moment you write something down, you've lost an entire you've lost the meaning of that sentence, right? So you could say the same sentence in like a dozen different ways, and it translates a dozen different ways. And so, but once you wrote it down, you will get the literal translation of that sentence, which isn't accurate in terms of like what you might be trying to say. So in short, I think it's an exciting space. I think you'll see it in your lifetime. It's we're all going to be or have the ability to speak in different languages and still retain our voice, which is the exciting part, is, you know, and that, I think that's for the avatar question you asked before, you know, and there are tons of celebrities out there that are global figures, you know, everyone in the world knows, you know, Will Smith, and everyone in the world probably knows Kevin Hart, and, you know, everyone in the world knows Bruce Lee, etc., right? Or knew Bruce Lee. And it'd be great if all of those voices could actually speak in those different languages, and so you didn't have to, it keeps the immersiveness of the experience up, right? And so, yeah, it's definitely very exciting, and it's you will see it, you'll see some elements of it very shortly, and you'll see like more elements of it in the next few years.
So my voice is already there with you. So, you know, I'm just like playing with myself, and that it's very, very interesting. And I invite, you know, everybody to go to Resemble AI website and, you know, try something up. It's very impressive. And it's an amazing, like, to work with your voice and to see how artificial intelligence is evolving. So thank you very much, Zohaib. And just to close this interview with inspiring words, always make the same question to everyone, which is, what is the most precious advice would you give to a creator or an entrepreneur for the future?
Oh, that's a good question. Keep this one really short. So I think you know, so we did a lot of I'm going to steal this one. I'm going to steal this one from Andy Warhol. So when I was when we were working on the Andy Warhol project was being built, I was following it fairly closely, and I unfortunately, you know, shamefully, that was the first real exposure I had to the artist himself, right? And one of the things that I found is the artists like him really were thinking outside of the box. And I think that's such great advice for like creatives, right? Now you have so many tools available to you, it can get very overwhelming because, you know, you can get lost in tools. But if you can take a step back, and if you can like think outside the box and see how tools can be combined together, and, you know, the only thing that's happened is the canvas has grown and the tools are all over the place, and now you have to assemble like what it comes together as. And I think if you step outside the box and then you take this larger canvas and all the tools you have available, I think there are things that you can make that are, believe it or not, like living in 2022, going into 2023, people have yet to see, which is really rare and hard to think of, things that people haven't seen yet, but those exist out there. And I think with the tools that are available, it's a great time to be a creative between a creative in this time where the line between a creative and a developer is really blurred, and you have access to everything that a developer or a technical person has access to, but you have a creative mind, which I think is extremely powerful.
That's beautiful. And thank
Awesome.
you so much, Zohaib. And thank you for watching, and keep tuned for other amazing content about the future of fashion and culture at BRIFW.com. See you soon. Thank you.